Welcome to Critical DMG, a podcast about two best friends who might have grown up but never grew out of their love for the Game Boy. We will be playing and reviewing every North American title released on Nintendo's original handheld console. This is episode 35. I'm Tony, and I would like to unsubscribe from this newspaper.
Aw, did they break your window?
No, just my heart.
My name's Jeff, and yeah, today we are talking about Paperboy. I'll just go ahead and say I'm a no on this. I think, Tony, it sounds like you're probably the same. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
First impressions are a big no.
Yeah, so we will get into that, but Tony, can you give us a back-of-the-box read?
Okay. Paperboy, one of the hottest arcade games of all time, is more mobile than ever. Hop on your bike for a freewheeling ride up the avenues of not-so-typical suburbia. Avoid motorcycles, tricycles, traffic, runaway tires, gratings, curbs, mad dogs, skateboarders, breakdancers, crazed grannies, and other hazards as you attempt to deliver to your customers. Finish your route each day, and then go for bonus points on the training course. Break windows, knock over garbage cans, ride through flower beds. All the action, excitement, and challenge of the coin-op game is ready to roll.
Yeah, so it's a port from the Atari arcade game.
Mm-hmm.
It was released in July of 1990 by Mindscape for the Game Boy. So DOG had been around, I guess, in arcades since mid-80s. And yeah, this came to the Game Boy in the 90s.
That's about it. There is really not a whole lot else to say.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't have a whole lot else.
It's a you know it or you don't, and I want to get into what happened with it here on the Game Boy.
All right, let's do it. All right, so the genre on this one, action game, job simulator, I guess. Your goal is to deliver your papers to your customers, and then controls, pretty simple, left and right, move you left and right, up and down, speed you up or slow you down, and then A and B, throw a paper. You kind of play through a week of deliveries. Tony, how far did you get? Did you do a full 7-day perfect delivery score, or what was your gameplay experience like?
I made it to Tuesday. That was it.
Okay. Did you play through Tuesday, or did you play Monday and then stop?
I didn't make it past Tuesday. I made it through Monday a couple times, like actually got through to the training course, and then Tuesday rolled around and I never really made it past that. They don't give you a lot of lives to work with, so like once you make it to the next day, if you did badly the first day, you're probably not going to get very far the second one.
Yeah, you start with kind of 3 extra lives in the bottom, so I guess 4 total. And yeah, you're avoiding obstacles. So kind of all those things that it said on the back of the box. If you hit one of those things, you lose a life. You crash your bike and you lose a life. And I think that's where my biggest sticking point was.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, I thought it was going to be remembering which houses to deliver to. But ultimately, I think it was the obstacles that really kind of, I don't know, like rubbed me the wrong way. They kind of come out of nowhere and they're not extremely easy to avoid all the time.
The size of things here is a detriment. And I don't want to get into it too much because I do want to save some of that for the aesthetic section because that definitely ties into it. But the fact that this is as honest and straight up a port as I feel like they really could have gotten away with on the Game Boy, mechanically, stylistically, whatever, means that the very big sprites and obstacles and everything else being crushed down onto the small screen resolution of the Game Boy leaves you so little wiggle room to avoid anything, whether it's a grate on the street or something popping out from the side of the house or anything else. All of the usual things that you expect from Paperboy if you've played literally any other iteration of this game on arcade or NES or anywhere, you know what to expect about the crazed grannies running across their yard or the spare tires rolling down the street. Like you get it, all these things to avoid. But on those other versions, the scope is pulled back more to give you a better view of where things are coming from and a little bit more time to avoid them. It definitely controls much better in other versions. And here I was not making progress, not because I wasn't getting papers into mailboxes or whatever, but because I wasn't making it more than like a few feet down the road most of the time before something got in my way and I just couldn't avoid it. I couldn't turn, or even if I did think I was avoiding it, I still hit it anyway because of my back tire's collision or whatever.
I agree. I have a few points on that I didn't know if I wanted to put in mechanics or the creative discussion.
Sure.
I agree. I think the readability probably goes in the creative. So I think we'll put a pin in that and we'll come back to that in, a little bit when we're talking about the readability of everything, which kind of brings me back to when you start a game, it shows you which houses are the houses that you're supposed to deliver to and which ones you're not supposed to. I didn't realize until I read the manual that the doormats for the houses you're supposed to are different colors. So I thought I had to memorize this like probably 10 to 15 house sequence.
Yeah.
And so my first few attempts at the game, I was like, okay, 1 2 1 1 1 2 1, and was trying to remember that as I was playing. That was not fun at all. Once I read the manual, I realized, okay, I was silly. They do have a visual indicator on which houses you're supposed to deliver to. It still took me a little while to figure out when to actually throw the newspaper because it's not super intuitive. But you kind of throw it to the side, but then you don't see where it lands. And so there were times when I would throw it, wouldn't get the points, knew it was the right house. And so that was also a little bit of like a sticking point, trying to figure out, when do I time this? When do I throw this? While also trying to avoid all the random things that were being thrown at me as well.
Yeah, you kind of have to lead your throw. Especially if you're going down the path at like a high speed, you're really trying to put the pedal to the metal. And you have to throw earlier so that the newspaper diagonally crosses the path into wherever you're actually trying to get it to land, like the mailbox or whatever. And you're entirely correct. Like you would be pedaling past a house and go to throw the newspaper into the box, basically knowing full well you will not actually see that newspaper connect with the box or not. You just kind of are waiting to hear the little chime or whatever that lets you know that you actually got the points. And by the time that happens, you're already like the next house over or whatever.
And you do have to kind of control your speed going faster and slower because, if you're going too fast all the time, if one of the hazards in front of you just pops out, then you're going to have very little time to actually avoid it. But then there are things that chase you, the dogs, the lady with the knife or a bottle or something.
Yeah.
There are things that chase you, so you can't just go slow the entire time. Kind of a fun little like back and forth there. But again, it feels like sometimes they just throw an almost unavoidable obstacle directly in front of you, and you have a dog chasing you, so you have to be going fast.
I will say that the training area portion of every level was slightly more enjoyable than the main portion of the level.
I would agree with that.
Even just for no other reason than I liked that it feels more like a dirt bike course. You've got ramps and hoops and things like that.
Yeah.
So it almost feels like a different game tacked on at the end, but that felt a lot more fun to play, even with the, you're supposed to be throwing your newspapers into like the hoops or whatever. Like it still felt fun to play in a way that the main game did not. I tried to play through this multiple times thinking originally that maybe I had just forgotten how to play Paperboy. You know, I'm sure for...
It's like riding a bike.
Oh, of course, it's like riding a bike. How could we have let that go so far without making that obvious pun? But other listeners, players our age, probably played Paperboy on something, are at least familiar with Paperboy from something else. But, like, it is very much exactly what it looks like. You're riding down the street, throwing newspapers, trying to get them to land in mailboxes or, like, on people's doorsteps or whatever. And I thought maybe I had just forgotten how to do that. Like, it had just been so long since I played Paperboy. I was like, wow, maybe I just forgot how to do Paperboy. But I don't think that that's what it is. I think that it's just that this implementation of the mechanics of Paperboy, mixed with the aesthetic decisions and the way that it was adapted for the Game Boy, which we'll get into in the back half of the episode, I think just come together to make for a mechanically unpleasant experience, just on its face.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that a lot. And a few quick points that I did want to bring out, just so we're not kind of talking in circles, because I feel like we really want to dive into the visual aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
I do like that you get points for breaking the windows of non-subscribed houses. That just seems insane.
That'll show them.
Yeah, you're just like a little menace, you know, driving through garden beds, knocking over trash cans, breaking windows, and apparently that's a good thing. So I kind of found that a little bit funny. Interesting mechanics there. True to the original game as well, but the last thing I have in the mechanics, I did look up the speedrun for this game. A full perfect week is around 11 minutes, so that's quite quick. It did look like there was kind of one place that was safer than the rest, kind of like right between the grass and the sidewalk, but there was still some maneuvering you had to do to avoid things, so it's not like some places where you just get into this one place and you're free to go.
Sure.
It was impressive to watch, especially after some of the struggles that I was having with it.
Wow. I was wondering if there were, like, safe places, because I tried to sort of straddle the road and the sidewalk so that it was easier for me to on-ramp my way onto the sidewalk if I needed to, like, dodge a car, and then get back into the road if something was in the sidewalk. I did try to ride that line, and it never really seemed to work out. It felt like the game was sort of trying to make me pick one or the other.
Yeah.
Like, leaning the controls to either side, and I don't know if that was, like, a purposeful thing or if that was just me, you know, or collisions or whatever, but that was kind of frustrating. It felt like I was fighting the controls in annoying ways. So I guess it is interesting to know that, like, there is technically, even if it's just like a cheese strat or whatever, there is kind of a quote-unquote safe zone, but I didn't find it in regular play.
Yeah, that is another thing that I kind of bounced off on. The curb, you know, between the sidewalk and the road, it definitely seems to not let you kind of cross over it unless there's a driveway or something like that. I agree. It feels like it really tries to push you one way or the other, and that feels really bad. The person I was watching was further in, so kind of like on the house side of the sidewalk.
Oh, okay.
Again, it wasn't completely safe. There were, you know, dog houses, some mailboxes, like random people that were getting in the way. It wasn't just, you know, a completely free hold up, hit A or B when I need to throw the paper in the right spot. It did require a decent amount of maneuvering, but it did look like there was potentially a little bit less random things that would show up that were unavoidable.
Yeah.
I think with that, I'm ready for the creative discussion to talk about some of those random things that show up really quickly and are unavoidable.
I will save my last thing for the wrap up, because I don't think that it necessarily applies directly to one or the other of the sections, and so I don't want to take up any more of this mechanical space than I think that we really need to give this. So,
all right.
Yeah, let's take a little break and we'll come back for the aesthetic section.
Sounds good. Ad break.
Ad break.
I'm sorry, Tony, but some of these older Game Boy games are just bad.
Oh, right. Like you could do any better?
You know what? I probably could.
Yeah? Then do it. Make your own Game Boy game.
Tony, this isn't the 90s. I am not learning assembly.
Not necessary. Just use GB Studio. GB Studio is easy to use game building software that lets you make games for your favorite retro gaming rectangle. With versions available for Windows, Mac, and Linux, it's never been easier to make a game for the Game Boy. And GB Studio's multiple project modes means you can develop for the original DMG, the Super Game Boy, or the Game Boy Color. Using a drag and drop style of visual scripting means you don't even need any prior programming knowledge to get started. And the best part is, your work can be built and exported as a fully playable Game Boy ROM, ready for any emulator or flash cart you choose. Learn more or download GB Studio for yourself at www.gbstudio.dev. Can't seem to clear any lines in your Tetris? Stuck underwater in Super Mario Land? The old Pokemon grind got you feeling blue? Then stay tuned to Critical DMG. It won't make you better at Game Boy games, but at least you won't feel so alone in how bad you are at them once you've listened to us. Users must provide their own Game Boy. Batteries not included. Certain conditions apply. Void where prohibited. Critical DMG is not responsible for any worsening gameplay after consuming our podcast. And we're back.
Resubscribe to the paper route.
No, I am not resubscribing to the paper route because it is not going to get any better from here. The first thing that I have on my paper notes is about how the music track is very short and extremely repetitive.
Yep. So no title music.
No title anything. The title is horrifically bland here.
Yeah, I kind of like the fact that they were kind of playing on like an old school paper with news articles and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
I kind of like that, but then I feel like they also kind of missed the mark a little bit with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no title music. And then it goes into gameplay footage pretty quickly and plays the gameplay music, which is, yeah, very short, very repetitive, and you're going to hear it when you're playing anyway. So music, not great. Title screen, close. I feel like it was so close, but yeah, missed the mark a little bit.
So how about that kid in the paper? How about the titular Paperboy? What a gremlin of a sprite, if ever I've seen one. Like his like face in the newspaper when you're finished or whatever. Wow. My 9-year-old took a look at that and was like, Mama, can you please fast forward?
It is a little bit nightmare fuel for sure. And again, they tried, but it's...
My comparison is unfortunately not the arcade version, but the NES version is the one that I probably have the most time in. But like, yeah, it looks pretty much like that one, just in 4 colors instead of the NES palette. But yeah, it looks the same. It just doesn't mean that it looks good.
We said music is not great.
Mm-hmm.
Title screen, also not great.
Mm-hmm.
Visuals, how are the rest of the visuals?
From a creativity perspective, I mean, they look like the ones from the rest of the Paperboy entries. From a readability perspective, I think they're abysmal. I think that it's really difficult to make out some of the stuff that is supposed to be accosting you on the screen at any given time.
Yeah, and I think, to me, each individual sprite was fine.
Sure.
The only thing I couldn't really tell what was going on was the tornado when it comes from the back and just wrecks you. That was the only thing I was kind of like, what is going on?
Uh-huh.
But I could tell it was something. I feel like most of them are fine. They just come out of nowhere. And it's just so... It offers so little time to react. And then the hitboxes are garbage. I think you mentioned in the mechanics section, your rear wheel hitting something. Yeah, it's because you have to hold one direction. You kind of like slant on the screen and you move relatively slowly and it looks like you're out of the way, but then the hitboxes just decide, nope, you're hitting this Jeep that's parked on the side of the road or whatever.
Right. And again, I understand that they look the way that they do in like the other iterations of Paperboy or whatever. You know, like they call attention to all the different hazards the same as they are, you know, like the guy breakdancing in his driveway, which I think kind of looks like he's struggling to put on a pair of pants rather than breakdancing. Like it looks like he like fell over putting his pants on and
That's
is
fair.
just like trying to do it from the floor.
Yeah, kind of one of those. He had a little bit too much for dinner and is trying to get his pants buttoned, and I could see that.
Exactly.
I could see that.
Yep. Somehow stumbled all the way out of the garage into the driveway at 8 a.m. or whatever time this is happening. Like, I get it. They're humorous, and you know, I can appreciate all of the wacky things that pop up, you know, dogs and tires and the like monster in the sewer grate and all those sorts of things. But again, and we touched on this a little in the mechanics, but they're so big here on the Game Boy's small screen that, unlike the last game that we talked about, which was Gargoyle's Quest, which, well, I guess it would technically be the second to last game that we talked about, if I get my continuity straight, also had really large sprites. But in Gargoyle's Quest, those sprites fit exactly what they were going for. And even when the game was slowing down or it felt like there was too much happening on screen, the big sprites were never really a problem. Here, they are a problem. Here, they are not stylized in a way that makes them fill out their collision area in a way that you can kind of see at a glance. And so it's really difficult to tell when a thing is actually going to be touching you to hit you or when you can safely avoid it. And I understand it's because they wanted to keep them as close to the original as possible. You know, this is supposed to be like as close to a one-to-one port as they could manage on the Game Boy, but I think that it ultimately sinks them here. I don't think that they look good enough to merit how much I feel like it affects the gameplay experience.
Agreed.
So whether I like them or not as like individual sprites, I can't get over how much it like is intrinsically part of the problem for like the gameplay experience. So I don't want to just be like, yeah, you know, they're good. Like, no, it's like a double-edged sword, I guess.
I also think the thing is, they're not good. They're acceptable. They are fine. They exist, and most of them you can tell, like, okay, this is what it's supposed to be.
Right.
But save for a few that are maybe, just kind of weird, none of them are super charming. None of them are super, I would say good. They're just good enough. And then, the fact that the size of them makes it difficult to play the game, I think just like detracts from that completely.
And there's not really a whole lot else to see, which I'm sure was like a performance thing for the Game Boy specifically. You know, they didn't crowd out a lot of the game with whatever background tiles and things like that. But it just makes for a really underwhelming visual experience. There's very little differentiation between like all of the different houses that you drive past, and the street is essentially barren apart from the things that are planted there to like actually, you know, cause you harm or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just like empty for a lot of it. And then you get to the trial run, you know, whatever, the dirt bike mini game, like I had said earlier. And that one at least feels a little more lively.
Yeah.
You know, it looks like like a dirt bike track, and you're going up these ramps and there's these hoops and you have like moving platforms and like gates and stuff like that. And it, you know, it's this really kind of weird clash.
I was literally thinking the same thing.
Yeah, like maybe in the other versions, it's not so stark of a difference.
Yeah.
Because there's like color to it and there's more life and more vibrancy to the rest of the presentation of the game. But here, because everything else feels so just kind of empty and lifeless apart from the like actual moving sprites that are out to get you, going from that area of the game to the trial mini game section of the game is like night and day in a way that probably wasn't intended.
Yeah, it's very bizarre. You go through, your paper route, and then you get to the bonus stage, and I think it kind of shifts everything a little bit more centered on the screen. And I think that's maybe why it feels better, is because you can see a bit more of what's going on. You don't have, kind of, I don't know, a third of your screen dedicated to houses that do nothing, like literally are just targets.
Right.
So I think that's potentially why the end section feels so much better and feels so much different, because it feels more navigable. Is that a word?
It feels more like it takes advantage of the Game Boy to show you where you are supposed to be on the screen and to keep you like not necessarily locked in that position, but to make it easier for you to have a vantage point on the obstacles and the path ahead of you.
Mm-hmm. And to plan things out a little bit.
Right, like the targets you're supposed to throw the newspapers in or whatever. I wish the main portion of the game had been more like this. And do you have anything else on the aesthetics? Because I think this is as good a segue as we're going to get into my larger kind of point with Paperboy.
I understand it's a game and they need to make it interesting, but running around as a gargoyle, I'm completely happy to suspend my disbelief and do that thing. When I'm on a bicycle and I run into a parked car that I didn't see until like 2 seconds before I hit it, I'm just like, what's going on? I obviously would have been able to like identify that. It became a thing of just, I could not suspend my disbelief for this game because there were just so many bizarre things that were happening. They need to teach kids to not run out into the road. That's just, I feel like the first thing you teach any kid is don't just run into the road. And then the cars that hit you coming the other way, like the driving cars, they don't leave enough room on the side of the road and apparently are just happy hitting cyclists. Law and order needs to come to whatever world Paperboy is in, but that's the last thing I have on it is just, again, I understand it's a video game. Teach your kids not to run out in the road, at the very least.
Well, that is definitely not where I was going to go. So I thought a lot about this, especially with regard to some of the other games that we have got on the Game Boy that came from other places originally, like other NES or arcade ports or whatever that came to the Game Boy. And one thing that I think is a noticeable trend is that the games that have made the transition to the Game Boy that went out of their way to not be direct ports are the ones that have done better. Like for us personally, like playing through these games, if we were to look at the games that, like I said, had come from other places, were originally on the arcade or what have you, that came to the Game Boy, Hey on Kyo Alien, Lock and Chase.
Batman stands out to me.
Yeah, all of these games that came from other places, they did something with the adaptation on the Game Boy that really seemed to fit the Game Boy. We hated the original Hey on Kyo Alien as it was presented here on the Game Boy.
It doesn't exist.
Sure, what adaptation? But the actually adapted one that was not just a port, but like a remake or whatever of the Hey on Kyo Alien was really enjoyable. Very high, for our rankings and stuff like that. Same thing for Lock and Chase. Lock and Chase, looking at the arcade version and other versions of the game, was not the same game that we got here on the Game Boy, with the clocks and the teleporters and all that stuff. Like, They adapted it to be something for the Game Boy. I wish that they had done that here for Paperboy, because if they had, I feel like we would be having a wildly different conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I could say it any better. I think, I'm imagining kind of your the Pokemon sprite on a bicycle, that kind of sort of aesthetic going through this. And I think that would have made a much better game, but I can understand if you're porting something you want to potentially stay true to the original, all of that fun stuff.
Probably easier that way rather than making something more original or whatever. You know, I get that.
And I'm sure you would have diehard Paperboy fans who dislike that you made creative changes. But yeah, with 36 years of hindsight, I agree. I think it just could have had a few tweaks to it to make it fit the smaller form size better. And they didn't do that. Thus, it wasn't really fun to play.
Yeah. I mean, they could have made these sprites more bespoke for the Game Boy, something that stood out a little bit better so that the readability was more accessible on the 4-color palette screen of the Game Boy.
Mm-hmm.
They could have made the sprites smaller so that they could fake like a larger vantage point so that you had more time to react to the different things on the screen. They could have, like, and this is just wild, like, fan game level speculation here. But, like, what if instead of actual Paperboy going down the street, house to house, whatever, what if it had been some sort of Paperboy Jr. or, like, Paperboy in training, and they focused on the training section instead of the house section, and it was just a series of training levels that added the hazards and the obstacles from the house portion into the training portion as you went along. The idea being that you're like graduating from Paperboy training school or whatever to get ready for the actual Paperboy job.
Because those exist.
Exactly. If you're suspending your belief enough to see that there's like, you know, Pennywise grasping at you from outside of the sewer drain here or whatever.
And the Grim Reaper and all of that.
Yeah, Grim Reaper's just like hanging out on the sidewalk in this like Midwestern town or whatever. Like, then you could believe that there's like this weird Paperboy training course or whatever. Like,
at the very least, have that be kind of like its own separate game mode. I think that could have been quite simple to implement as, you know, 1-player, 2-player training. And the training is just the training courses. And if that's how you want to interact with the game, it would work.
Yeah. Bottom line for me is this one is not worth the batteries. I would not recommend Paperboy on the Game Boy at all.
I think I would agree with that. I think Paperboy broadly, not bad.
Sure.
Adapted to the Game Boy, nah, not good.
Yeah.
I'm happy to, I guess, kind of leave that there because, yeah, I don't know if there's too much more to say about it.
No. I think the only other thing I have, and I just literally had nowhere else to put this, but I had to put it in my notes because it was just so funny to me, is that in the high score table for this game, there are names already on the table for like the first however many scores, and the top scores are just RB, Dat, the boy. And I don't know why, but the first time I saw that, it made me laugh so hard. Like, it felt purposeful that it was in there, and I don't know if it is or why, but I wrote it down in my notes, and I have been, like, pestering my 9-year-old by just going, RB Dat the boy. Just randomly, because it was so strange. Like, it didn't strike me as names or anything else like that. It just, I don't know. Like I said, I literally had nowhere else to put this, but I would have been remiss to not call attention to RB Dat the boy in the high score tables.
Interesting.
In this stupid game.
I did not notice RB, but Dat the boy apparently.
Dat the boy, you know?
All
right.
My
God. I think it's quiz time.
It's quiz time. So currently sitting at 81.7%, so 82. So we're doing all right. Let's see if Paperboy's quiz can do me better than the game did.
Boy, I hope so. Paperboy quiz, question 1. While I can safely assume, Jeff, that you have read the Wikipedia page for this game at least enough to see that the cartoon that we talked about in a long ago episode, Captain N the Game Master, was originally supposed to star the Paperboy from this game, only they were going to call him Buddy, and then they were going to call the show Buddy Boy, which we are not going to even get into that. But instead, getting into the Destructoid article that was going into all of this information, the even more wild cut content from that original show idea was a proposed family for Mega Man. Is it true or false that this mega family wasn't actually going to be robots, but humans wearing some kind of power suits instead?
Can you destroy like the Mega Man premise that badly?
I mean, you've seen pictures of Captain N the Game Master and the weirdo gremlin Mega Man character in that game, or in that show, so...
Yeah, I think I'll go true, because Captain N and the Game Master, if they do anything, it is bizarre. So...
wildly off base.
So I think I'm going to go with true. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, it is true.
Let's go.
According to a 2013 Destructoid article on the Captain N show's development, Mega Man was meant to be the character that Buddy, the Paperboy, would actually sort of inhabit when visiting the game world, instead of, I guess, being transported there like what actually ends up happening in the show. And Mega Man had his own mega family, which included a Mega Mum, Mega Dad, and 2 pets, a Mega Bird and a Mega Rat. This sounds absolutely bonkers, but I would love to see Mega Rat happen for real sometime.
Yeah. I'm just... anything from that show is just... they were having a good time in that writing room, we will say. All right.
Moving on.
One question right. Let's see how question 2 does.
Question 2. The original arcade version of Paperboy isn't unique in its hardware, but it does still stand out fondly for plenty of people due to its being bright red bike handlebars instead of, typical joystick and buttons. The idea for these, as well as their original prototype form, were actually taken right from another arcade game of the time, 1983's licensed space shooter Star Wars, which was, based on the movie property Star Wars.
Of course.
Right. Working as a proof of concept that you could, in fact, make a game about steering a bike down a street and throwing newspapers, there was one problem that plagued early control iteration for the Paperboy arcade. What was it? A. Nobody wanted to use X-Wing controls to toss newspapers. B. The controls snapped back too hard and caused injuries. C. The buttons weren't easily visible to shorter players, especially children. Or D. Because of the Star Wars controls, people wouldn't stop making engine noises while playing the game.
You're not supposed to make engine noises? Come on.
I mean, maybe if you're on like a motorized bike.
Is joy dead in the world? I'm going to go with C. I think the handlebars could obstruct view decently well. I would assume that they have fixed any snapback issues. Yeah, I'm going to go with C.
Good choice. It is C.
Let's go.
Yeah, in a 2019 article for thumbsticks.com, Atari programmer John Salwitz recounts issues with the development of Paperboy for arcades that includes how some of the buttons were basically invisible to shorter players. During early playtests, people who couldn't see or hadn't noticed that the buttons were on the prototype controls would basically just go through the whole game without throwing a single newspaper. This, Salwitz says in the article, quote, "We fixed by putting the start buttons on the controller itself, so that you had to find the button to start the game."
Solid engineering.
Right.
And yeah, obviously anyone would want to fly an X-Wing to deliver papers, so...
That's the Game Boy Paperboy adaptation that we should have gotten, didn't, is Paperboy in space.
Paperboy, when in doubt, put it in space.
Exactly.
A solid question, and I'm 2 for 2.
Coming round to finish your route and bring it home. Question 3. A 1985 distribution flyer for the original arcade Paperboy that I found uploaded to the International Arcade Museum's website goes to great lengths to hype up the new Paperboy game, of course. But part of that hype is about the system hardware itself. A section of the flyer goes into the specific differences between the Atari System 2 and System 1 arcade hardware, since Paperboy was the first game to use the new System 2 for better graphics, performance, all that good stuff. But if Paperboy was the first System 2 game, what was Atari's last System 1 game? Was it A, Marble Madness in 1984, B, Road Blasters in 1987, C, Gauntlet in 1985, or D, they never actually stopped using System 1 to make games?
Oh, okay. So the question here is, do I think they used Atari 1 after Atari 2? I think they probably... I want to say they did, because, like, cost-cutting, blah, 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 all of that. I'm going to go with B was the shooter that came out in 87.
Road Blasters in 1987, yeah.
I'm going to go with that one.
Good, because it was the right answer.
Let's go. Every once in a while, my mind does things that isn't second-guessing and actually logics correctly.
Yeah. As a game developer who has yet to update to the latest version of the software that I use to make my games, I can promise you that people are using the old software or hardware to continue making things even after the new stuff comes out. So, Road Blasters was the last game to officially release using the System 1 Atari hardware. It is a 1987 vehicular combat game where you are driving an armed sports car through 50 rally races, destroying the competition with your equipped cannon and other goodies. I have never heard of it or played it, but it looks pretty cool, and they even made customizable Matchbox cars as like a promotional tie-in for the game, which I think are probably cooler.
3 for 3, so doing all right. These last couple of quizzes have been doing well for me, so...
Right.
It's strange, I haven't been, like, studying or reading more. I guess I'm getting luckier, or I don't know.
And I haven't been trying to make the quizzes easier. Like, I haven't been, like, trying to dumb them down or anything about it either, so...
But I'll take it. 3 for 3. That's good with me.
Yep.
Can you remind us what our listener question for Lock and Chase was?
I can. Lock and Chase question was about how in 2018 there was a company known as Lub Blub LLC, and they had developed a game for basically most modern systems that took a bunch of classic Data East arcade games, Data East being the company that made Lock and Chase, and they put those games into this back and forth kind of more like a party twin stick shooter sort of a deal. And I thought it sounded pretty good, but I wanted to know what game it was in case anyone else had thought maybe they were going to look it up. And I knew, Jeff, there was absolutely no way you were going to have the answer to this one.
Super Smash Brothers.
No, it's actually called Johnny Turbo's Arcade Heavy Burger.
Okay.
Or also just, I've seen it as just Heavy Burger too.
Interesting.
The title doesn't really matter all that much anymore, considering that you can't get the game anyway.
Aw, sad.
It was released in 2018, but as of 2024, all versions of the game have been delisted from online marketplaces like Steam and the eShop and whatever. This is most likely because of licensing issues with the Data East arcade games that they used in Heavy Burger.
Makes sense.
And this also wasn't the only game taken offline around the same time that this one was for the same reasons. So, you know, it's a shame. It looked really cool.
Sad that it's no longer around, but also get licensing rights if you're going to make a game, I suppose, is the TLDR of that.
It is very difficult to say. I wasn't able to get anything definitive, but especially when it comes to like porting and remakes and a lot of these sort of classic arcade games, that sort of stuff can change in what feels like the drop of a hat. So we are not to say, I guess, is the bottom line there. Anywho.
Yeah, I think that brings us to Paperboy's listener question.
Okay. I have a rather short question this time, but that's because it involves math.
Ooh.
Paperboy celebrated its 40th anniversary as a series last year in 2025. Looking into the history of it a little bit, I feel that it's safe to assume that the age range of the type of young newspaper carrier back in the 1980s US that would star as the titular Paperboy here was probably somewhere between the ages of 12 and 15 years old. So my simple question is, would the Paperboy be eligible for retirement benefits yet here in the US? Jeff, you are not allowed to answer the question live, so you have to do the math in your head.
I don't know when retirement benefits start in the US is actually the problem.
I had to look it up too.
Anyway, if you know, let us know in the comments and all of that. And if anything, I showed in our Gargoyles quest that I can't do mental math. So, you know, don't trust me if you hear me mathing, even though I've taken way too many math classes.
That's true. Don't trust the engineer to do your math for you, I guess.
Exactly. Thanks for listening to Critical DMG. If you would like to support us further, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/criticaldmgpod. Join us there for monthly newsletters and extra content. Otherwise, please leave a review wherever you get your podcasts, and maybe recommend us to your friends or anyone else you might think that would like the show. It really helps us out, and we appreciate it. I think that brings us to the end of our first, menial job simulator. I don't know how many more we'll see on the Game Boy, but we're done delivering papers for now.
Yeah, only because we aren't covering Game Boy Color games, because they literally did Paperboy again on the Game Boy Color.
Yep. Maybe that's our next show in a decade from now or something, but...
Oh my god. No, let's worry about next week first.
For now, that's the end of Paperboy. Join us next week when we talk about Penguin Wars.
Ooh, I don't know anything about this one, but I like penguins.
Yeah, and...
I don't know how I feel about their wars, but I like penguins.
I was about to be like, and wars. And I was like, no, I don't know. I don't like those. But we will see. We will see how Penguin Wars shakes out and what that's all about next week.
Okay. All right. Ready? One word. What genre do you think it's going to be? Go.
Strategy.
Ooh. Oh, that's a good guess. I'm going to go with puzzle.
Statistically, you are probably correct, but...
I'm taking the safe answer.
Aren't all puzzle games kind of just strategy games? So...
Ooh, that's a philosophical debate for a different episode.
Anyway, that's it for this week. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.